And maybe that's what you're saying, Pam, right? Like there's so much being sort of put upon people that slowing down to notice what those pieces are can actually be helpful and get you farther than trying to cover a ton of stuff. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's interesting. Okay. Well, it looks like we have a quorum. Maybe most folks are here. So we're going to get started. I'm going to share my screen for a minute. I hope I seem to be having a little strange internet thing, but hopefully not too long. So tonight we're really going to talk about tasks and qualities of tasks and do some unpacking of different types of tasks. And then we're going to talk about exactly what you've brought up related to kind of using this instructional cycle as a workflow mechanism, and how you as coaches can be finding resources to help people kind of move along with those steps. So that's the focus of our work tonight. I hope everybody's had a great time thinking through your task. I know that I have been having a good time, and I keep, asking people to give me feedback on my task, which has actually been interesting to do in different environments. So last week in Jeffco, Alabama, I was lucky enough to have a couple teachers who were there give me some feedback. And then in my other blended cohort group, I also got some people to give me some feedback. So anyway, I hope that you've been having that kind of fun, because now we're going to sort of start talking in partners and pairs and different configurations about the tasks that we've each been working on. So that's kind of where we are in the process. I'm actually going to stop. Rob, I think you're going to take over right now anyway, which is good because I can't stop coughing. I'll be right back.
All right. While Suzanne catches her breath and clears her throat, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Everybody can hear me okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Thank you. Just getting confirmation. Wasn't seeing my little microphone light up like it usually does. Okay, so what we often do in Blended Foundation, starting with this meeting, and we'll probably do one for each of the remaining meetings if we haven't done them already. I wasn't on the first few. But we like to start often with a coach tip or an LDC Core Tools tip to kind of just give you some insight into little known, sometimes, but very valuable features or ideas or things you can try yourself in your own work or with your teachers. So the one we're going to look at really quickly today, I'm going to demonstrate for you, is something that you or your teachers could be using inside of the module editor to help you maintain a running record of changes that you make to your module. So this is called a snapshot. Snapshots, it's somewhat similar to having a revision history like you might have in a Google document or a Microsoft Word document. So you could create this running record of your module to just document those changes you make over time, whether in response to feedback or anything else. So the courses don't require that you use snapshots at all, but there's at least one point at the end of each instructional cycle before you revise the module after you've taught it, where you're given the option at least to create a snapshot. So I'm just going to demonstrate that for you right now, because you can do these anytime in your work if it helps you. So to demonstrate, I'm in a module here, and I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to see that I've received some comments, right? So these comments about my task and about my standards might be my coach or my colleague suggesting I make a certain revision or an edit to my module. And as you see, this comment in particular is rightly suggesting that I make a significant change to my focus cluster and a very significant change to my task itself, which is change this from a informational or explanatory writing mode or from an argumentation writing mode to an informational explanatory writing mode. So change your writing standard and then change your task template and rewrite your task. So a pretty significant change. So what you might want to do, and you might want to encourage your teachers to do this at times, is to create a snapshot to retain a version of your module when it looks like this, so that you can then go ahead and make some changes. It won't completely overwrite them, so you can access them again. So if I go to more options and I select Create Snapshot. What it's doing right now is it's creating a record of this module that'll be locked down that I can always refer back to, even as I go ahead and make more edits and more changes to my module. So it's going a little bit slow, so we'll just wait 1 second as it creates that snapshot. But I'm just going to show you how you can then navigate and find those snapshots from the past, and I can continue to edit my module, whether it's the task, the standards, anything throughout it, and still have that old version of it. So what happens once the snapshot is created is on the left side navigation menu, it now says Snapshots 1. If I click on it, it'll give me a running list here, whether I have 1 snapshot or 30 snapshots. It tells me the date the snapshot was taken. It also allows me to rename it. So I'm going to write here, I'm going to give my old, the snapshot, the old version of my module, a different title. So original version with argumentation. That's what I'll call that one. So I can just remember why I took a snapshot of it to contrast it with what it's going to look like after I make that change. So if I just go, what I'll do really quickly just to show some change to this module, I could go in here and delete that standard that I don't want to have anymore. And I'm going to replace it with the informational writing standard instead. So I've done that in my main live version of my module. So I've made that edit, I've made that change. Instead of having writing standard number 1, I now have writing standard number 2. But if I go to my snapshot, I can click here to go and see what my module used to look like before I made that change. And this, again, is a record that'll never change. I'll see up here in the title, it shows me that this is a link I can use to navigate back to the module. I can use a snapshot menu right there. But as you see here, it has my old argumentation version. So sometimes we just see teachers and coaches working with their teachers using snapshots so that they can always go back and see over time the changes that they've made. There's a few other things I can do. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I might decide later, maybe, oh wait, I really liked that old version of my module that I made a snapshot of. And I can go in and copy that snapshot into my library and create a new module with it that I can continue to edit. So I'm going to stop there because it's just supposed to be a quick intro to something like this, but you might want to play with it a little bit. Maybe before you make significant revisions next time to your module, consider creating a snapshot before you do that so you can go ahead and have a look in the future at the different changes that you've made. So with that, I'll stop just for a second to see if there's any questions or just if anybody's used that feature before, if anybody's had any experience with that. All right, what I'm going to do now is kind of pick up where we left off last week. I'm just going to pull up and share with you a document that we kind of quickly at the end talked about. I'm going to paste a link to it in the chat, and I'll navigate to it in my own browser. So because this week is about reflecting upon and revising key decisions, your standards-driven tasks, we want to begin by digging a little deeper into our thinking in the disciplines. As I said, we ended last week looking at some materials on this topic, but we'll dive deeper for just a couple of minutes right now. So one way to start framing a discussion about what makes analytical reading and authentic writing in each discipline unique is considering what each discipline prioritizes or values and how members of that discipline communicate their thinking and ways of knowing. So a valuable resource to guide this type of conversation is Dr. Barry Olson's Academic Writing Across the Disciplines. That's the link I just sent out. If you haven't had a chance to read the whole paper, we definitely recommend doing that as soon as you have a chance to do so. So the full brief discusses several ways each discipline values writing and how to better understand and provide students with authentic writing experiences that will align with academic writing at the college level. So as we touched on last week, one of the decision points you'll want to consider is, sorry, I'm just trying to navigate to the right spot here. All right. So yeah, one of the areas that you want to consider is the ways in which the type of writing your students are actually going to do. So really talking about the writing product portion of your task prompts. So let's take a minute to look at this section of the brief, which is the types of assignments chart. She's broken it down into the different disciplines and the different variations of writing assignments that you might have your students engage with. So I have on the screen right here, this is the one for ELA. So going across the top here with assignment, we have literary analysis and rhetorical analysis, and argument, definition essay, and then it gives you variations based on your rhetorical purpose variations and other traits. And it even aligns them to different LDC tasks. So what I'd like you to do is take a look through the different charts by discipline. There's a few more for ELA. There's a chart for history, and then you'll see some for different parts of the science discipline. I think we even have some in here for specific to engineering. But you can scroll through, just pick which one that maybe you're writing your task about or what you're focused on in terms of discipline. Go through the chart and see what what kind of bubbles to your mind about the different types of writing products you could consider given this assignments charts. And what we were going to do, we were thinking about having you chat about this with a partner to discuss maybe what your current task prompt says, but we're going to just kind of accelerate things a little bit and maybe just look through this chart for the next maybe 60 to 90 seconds, and just add a wondering into the chat that you can share with the whole group. So let's just all put in one wondering or noticing that we came across when we were looking at this chart in terms of different writing products, in terms of different assignments, given what we're working on right now. So I'll give you about 60 seconds to do that. So as you all take another moment or so to look through the chart and add a wondering or a thought or a question to our chat, I'll note that I think what we often find with our tasks, and it might be the case with your task right now, that very often you're, especially at the middle school to high school level, you might have a writing product that's just an essay. It might just be that phrase, right? And often that might be okay, right? The way that you're getting your students to write in a certain way might not be captured by the way your writing product is written out in your task. Your instructional ladder later might help guide students toward really the type of thinking and type of writing that they need to do. So it's not always necessarily a problem if it's just an essay, but people find that this chart helps them think through what they might do instead sometimes. But even if you stick to an essay, you might think about the type of essay they might write, and looking through this can kind of help structure that. So I'm going to leave, I'm seeing lots of really good thoughts come through now. This is very nice. But I'm going to pass this back over to Suzanne to wrap up this before we move on to our next section, just to see if, Suzanne, if there's anything else we want to discuss about this particular article and this chart before we move forward.
No, you know, it's interesting. I've been talking about this chart a lot lately, and I think that the most important thing for people like yourselves who are coaches and leaders of the work in your areas is to think about what product means in the LDC context. And what it means is that you're going to explicitly teach that format. So I think that oftentimes I see people putting in like sexy products, right? Because they think that writing a PSA would be more engaging, you know, than writing an essay or something like that for students. But yeah, hashtag sexy products is right. I mean, the issue with LDC is that it's supposed to teach kids to communicate their knowledge in specific ways. And the way they do it is through the way they write. So if we're going to teach them to organize knowledge in a certain way, then we teach them the product format. So that's really the thing for you to consider in your own task is if you choose a particular product, it means you're going to teach that format. So you'd expect to see that in the note-taking that they do, right? In the mini tasks around note-taking, you'd expect to see it in the way that they do their outline, in the way they revise, and in the way the writing process works. Like, it was a great example last week where teachers were trying to write a task where an executive summary was the product, right? When an executive, there were a group of science teachers, an executive summary is written after you've written your report, whether it's your lab report, your design report, whatever the report is, right? So you can't have executive summary as your product unless the kids write the full report and then they write the executive summary afterwards, right? And they had not realized the amount of work behind an executive summary. And so it was a really interesting conversation around, well, whoops, if we have to teach the full report before we teach the executive summary, that totally changes what our task is and what our ladder looks like, right? Because we have to teach all the stages of that report. Anyway, it's that kind of discussion and thinking for you as you consider your own product in your task. So that's all.
I think this chart too will help those teachers who choose a particular product but don't realize that they have to provide examples and show students how to develop those particular products. Like, teachers always choose editorial for social studies, but students don't read the newspaper. So they don't know how to write an editorial. They don't understand the purpose of an editorial if it actually fits the task in itself. But I think that this will help, seeing the traits will help them rethink some of the product choices that they make and coming up with ideas how to introduce them to students.
And Pam, I think you're right. I mean, one of the big questions in the ELA world, of course, is informational text. And you know, people do these interesting things like, you know, have like a literary text and then have, you know, like the one I've seen that I use as an example all the time is like To Kill a Mockingbird, and then an informational text on like Rosa Parks being brave, bold, sitting in the back, in the front of the bus, right? Like, the truth is, in the ELA disciplines, examples of literary analyses, rhetorical analyses, are in fact the right informational text for that discipline. Mm-hmm. Right? In social studies, editorials, for example, are the right kinds of text to add. So I would expect to see mini tasks where kids are reading those as mentor texts, right? Like, read these 3 editorials, analyze the structure, and now go write an editorial using that structure, right? Like, that would be the ladder I would expect to see. Mm-hmm. If editorial was my product.
The challenge is kids don't really read anything other than maybe young adult novels outside of school. So when you think about literary analysis, they're not, I mean, there's no literary analysis in the textbook, right? So that's not something that they're going to see. You know, most of the text, I think teachers, we see them sort of in the writing process often where things kind of fizzle away because there is such a lack of understanding of these products and such a lack of familiarity.
Exactly. There's a real lack of familiarity. I mean, really. And
who reads a literary analysis?
Well, and it's interesting that you say that. I mean, I think, and then we're going to go to our tasks because I think this is going to be continued in those conversations. But in writing my task, I realized, I mean, the first thing I did was go and read what other people had written about my text. That was the first thing I did before I started writing my task, right? Because I wanted to think about what are literary critics writing about this particular text, and how does what I want to do with kids fit within that context of that genre of thought around texts, right? But I mean, who has time for that, right? Teachers don't have time to do that for every text that they teach. They just don't. So you're right. Being unfamiliar, being not widely read,
Well, especially in the sciences where the disciplinary texts are such a high level. You know, so now I'm a middle school teacher, or how do I bring in real world science articles? You know,
And to be honest, how many elementary, middle, and maybe even high school science teachers, how much of their regular reading is scientific journals?
right?
I mean, I don't know, but I would guess not the big.
Dawn had a lot, but yeah.
But you know what I mean? Just like
Yeah.
in general, like I just don't think we as adults read that stuff unless we're in school or something.
Yeah.
or, I don't know. Maybe people do. I don't, but maybe people do. So a lot of this, the problem with the core and the problem with a lot of this is that, and one of the reasons why teachers fall back on that essay or fall back on the assignments they've always used or the instructional strategies they love is because they're just inexperienced in what they're supposed to be teaching kids. That's all. So we're asking people to teach kids things that they don't do a lot of, right? Which is why, like, I theoretically I could teach you some like karate moves, but I'd Google it and look at a YouTube video, and I wouldn't be a very good teacher, right? But so knowing our stuff is really important, and people now don't have time to know their stuff even, hardly. And also like we really are going to move now, but professional development opportunities. I mean, for example, how much of professional development opportunities are deep into the authentic parts of the discipline, right? When English teachers go to professional development, are they sitting down and like, dissecting Thoreau or something, right? Are science teachers reading a bunch of different scientific data studies and analyzing those studies? Are social studies teachers reading, historical criticism? I don't know, but I haven't seen a lot of that. So I don't think we're helping ourselves. Anyway, now I'm just pontificating, so it's boring. Let's go look at some tasks. See, now I can talk, and so that inhaler really got me a little jazzed up. All right, so the thing we are going to do is move into breakout rooms. So we'll be in 2 smaller groups. And you want to have your rubric. So if you have your curriculum alignment rubric, I don't know if we'll put that in the chat as well. Yeah, we are going to be sharing our modules to a specific collection. We'll show you in a little bit how to do that so that we're all in the same collection together. So Rob's put the rubric into the chat. So you want to have that open in a window. And then also the Zoom window, because we'll just use our screen share. So we're going to go into breakout rooms, and then if you haven't done this before, you'll get a little pop-up on your screen that'll direct you to the room, and then when our time is up, we'll be popped back into the room together again. So don't be surprised to have your screen change now all of a sudden. I don't know whose number this is. Steve, is that you? It might be your number. Are we coming back?
Susan, how do you set up a breakout room?
So you have to be the host, but if you are a host, you can just go into your settings in Zoom. I can't. I can tell you where it is. Maybe it's under my account, but it's settings, and you can. It just asks you if you want breakout room capacity, and you click a button, and it gives you it. So if you're a host, a black button pops up on your bottom of your screen where you do the other things, you know, share screen, chat, whatever, called breakout rooms, and you just click it, and you can easily put people into different rooms, as many as you want, and you just click it. So you can give, if you were using Zoom for things, you can give yourself breakout room powers. I don't know, by just in your settings.
Here we are.
Here we are. We're back. We're back. All right. So we're going to spend the rest of the time looking at a few things around coaching. And we wanted to show you some resources and just give you some thinking about coaching people along the workflows. I wanted to show you, I don't know if you've seen this or not, so it might be old news and it might be new news. But the instructional cycles that you've been using are set up as workflow support, right? Like they basically are intended to just guide people through the work you do when you write or take and revise an LDC module. So basically, this is instructional cycle 1. It looks a little different than it does when you see it in Core Tools. And the point of instructional cycle 1 is to really focus on how standards drive tasks, right? When you're going to teach your module, you think about what standards look like in tasks. You make a focus cluster for your module. You select your template and your standards. You select your other things. You review against the quality criteria. Most important thing in any task is to answer it yourself and figure out what the skills are in it, finalize the instruction, teach your module, analyze the results in your student work, and then reflect and decide what you're going to teach next, right? It's kind of like the work you do to do that process of coming up with a task, giving it to kids, and figuring out if it worked. We call this like a workflow. Basically, instructional cycle 1 takes you through that workflow, and why? And you focus on the standards, how standards manifest in tasks. Instructional cycle 2, same workflow, right? You still pick your task, standards, product, everything else, respond, but the focus in this one is how standards manifest in a skills list. You have to have a task, of course, but the real cognitive focus is on skills lists. And in the third one, the real cognitive focus is on the mini tasks and the instructional sequence of mini tasks. So what I wanted you to notice is that in each of these instructional cycles, the red portions are the portions that correspond to the focus of that cycle. So we're thinking about tasks right now in Blended Foundations. So we actually had 3 sessions focused on tasks and standards, right? When you are focusing on skills lists, which comes next, you'll sort of have 3 heavier kind of areas that focus on the skills list. And then the same around mini tasks and instruction. So that's kind of the structure of the workflow. The reason why it's important is for you as coaches is to figure out, like, what do you coach teachers on, right? What do you give feedback on? And we've tried to build in supports so that if people are working heavily on tasks, then you give feedback on their tasks. Don't give them feedback on their mini tasks, because that's not the focus. Give them feedback on these tasks, right? So I wanted to show you a few things in here there are resources for you to help you do that kind of feedback. So I'm going to go into, well, we'll go in here because this is kind of where we started about a week ago. So here we're in the workflow, we're selecting focus standards in a template. You've just done this. You've also done the next few steps, but you've just done this. And so if you're a coach and you have teachers who are at this point in their workflow, one question we always get is, well, how do I help them just focus on the things that I care most about right now, which is those standards in that task. So the right-hand column in here is the column for coaches, right? Lots of tips for how to coach people, how to do active facilitation, how to be responsive to their needs, different core tools tips to help you get started. I'm actually going to close my status bar so that I have a little more view of the right-hand column. And so here's a comment that might be related to, like Ashley, you asked how you make comments, right? So responsive coaching, you might want to start making your comments in the comment bubbles, right? Like use your comment bubbles as a way to communicate. Oh, look, Pam, you're in here. Look at that, Pam. Ha!
She's famous.
She's famous. This is an example from a module Pam was coaching, right? The Romeo and Juliet module in Rankin, I think, maybe?
Yes, it was Rankin.
Rankin, yeah. So anyway, this is a way to do that coaching. A resource I want to show you is at the bottom of every session in the workflow is this Coaching for Impact section. And this basically tells you what to look at in your data analytics, and we don't need to talk about that now. But importantly, at the bottom of it, it gives you kind of a guide about what kind of feedback to give, right? So before the next session, give your participants feedback about their, let's remind ourselves what happened in this session. It was the template and the focus cluster, right? Like that's what you're giving feedback on. And it actually gives you some tools to do that. So if you pop this out, looky here, you have feedback about that exact topic, right? Oh, they do have 3 to 4 standards in their cluster. So here's a nice little feedback phrase that you can cut and paste and send to a teacher that you work with. They don't have 3 focus standards. So here's a few little things that you can say. They have more than 3 to 4, or this is the big one. We see this all the time. They have R1 or R10 as a focus standard, and those are never focus standards, right? So here's a few things you could say. So anyway, this is a resource that you may or may not know about that I wanted to share. And I'll stop there and ask sort of like questions, or what is it that you want to know, or what is this making you think of in your work as a coach? We'll see what's going on in the chat. Any questions, comments? Nobody? Not a soul. Yeah, Kelly, and the thing you'll find is it's in every session, right? So no matter where you are, so this is where we are now in 5 and 6. So you'll find, again, lots of these coach tips on the side, and then, and they range, right? Like this is the section where they select their texts, right? And so maybe people don't have a way to have text. Maybe they don't have text, for example. So there's a little tip here for you on the right with a resource that you can share with folks. If they don't have text, here's a really rich way to find primary source, all OER and free texts. So this is really intended to help you as a coach move people along in the workflow and help you focus on what they're focused on. So again, don't comment on their mini tasks because that's not the point of this session. Give them feedback on what they're actually deciding on in their workflow. And once again, at the bottom, here's this Coaching for Impact, and you can see if you pop this out, you will have a whole different set of tips you can use to give feedback on the content of this particular session in the workflow. So, anyway. Okay. The other thing is the, Rob, can you put in the link to the responsive coaching questions? Because that's the other thing to share right now. All right, so Rob's sharing this other document. This is also a useful one because it's all located, like I like things on short pieces of paper that I can have printed out and look at. So here are some questions that you can ask about these very specific choices that go into putting together that task, right? So focus standards obviously are one. Choosing your template is another one. Choosing your writing product, like we've been talking about tonight, is another one. You know, obviously choosing your text, whatever. So you have that here to have at your fingertips. I don't know about you, I can't remember this amount of things. So I tend, as a coach, I usually tend to pick one and just practice it all the time. Like I was on a project once where in a non-judgmental response project where I had to pick a non-judgmental response and use it for a year. And I was not allowed to use any other responses. So I picked okay as my response, and I spent a year practicing just saying okay anytime anybody said something to me. So think about, like, what is your standard question? Don't pick all of these. Just pick one. Just pick one or two. Otherwise, it's too much work. All right. The last thing I want to share is what you have in terms of your analytics. I just want to show you what that is and what that means. If I think I've not pulled up the right thing though. Well, I'll pick it doesn't matter which one I pick. Well, I'll pick one. So the other thing you have as a coach is the analytics. And what this does is allow you to kind of see how people are doing in the workflow, right? So in this particular cohort, the blue module activity tells me that people are working on their modules. That means they've selected a template, they've selected a focus standard, they've selected a text, like they've done the work of the module. It's just what the work is that they do, right? Orange diamonds show where feedback is given, either by a coach or peer-to-peer feedback. Student work is shown with the red triangles, and then if they get badges, those are shown as well. So I wanted you to see that you have access to the kind of data. Oh, that's not helpful. That can help you figure out where people are in the workflow. And the point of it for you as a coach is to keep people, moving along in their work. Like, do the work of the planning, teaching, evaluating results, and then plan again, however that is. So, all right, I'm going to stop talking. That was a lot of talking. So what I'd like to do before we close is, so this is the week when you are going to talk to a partner about your task. So you're going to do your pitfall review in session 1-6, take your task that you've now completed and actually check your own task for pitfalls. So there's explanation about the pitfalls here. They're in the rubric as well. And what you can do is check your own task and talk about it with people.
I need to see.
Or you can give your task to your partner and ask them to do the pitfall check. Whatever way you think is comfortable, that's what we're going to do. So we've got a list of partners for you to check in with. So before our next meeting, we'd like you to contact your partner, figure out 20 minutes to connect with them, and just just, before you talk, just, either share your task with them or do your own pitfall review, and then have a conversation about how is your task constructed? Are the pieces fitting in your task, right? Are there any pitfalls that you need to be worried about or that you might not have noticed because you've been so deep in it? So here's a list of partners. Everybody has each other's contact from the email communication that we send out. And if there's some reason you don't, let us know. We'll send this out in the follow-up email tomorrow as well, so that you can make sure you have that contact information. And we've tried to give you a new partner that you may not have worked with up until now. But that maybe didn't always work, but hopefully you'll be able to have a interesting and important conversation. Okay, so that was a lot of talking at the end. So let's chat a little bit before we go. What are you thinking about? Just to review, we talked about discipline, we looked at task structure and coaching resources that help you guide people in their own workflows. So phrase, sentence, couple sentences, what are you most thinking about as you leave here tonight? Either a wondering or a thought that you're going to ponder. Mm-hmm. There is a resource that has it's just the chart from that paper. It's not the whole paper. So I just want to make sure if some of you are wanting to be using this, that it's available to you. Yeah. So it's in the session we just finished, 1.5 under student writing product. It's in this design tip here. It's this click, and it's just the chart. It's not the whole paper. So if you really like this chart, you can use it. And I'll also put the link here in our chat. Okay, everybody, we're a little over. Thank you for your patience, and post-Halloween lull in the atmosphere. Maybe it's the down after the sugar rush. At least it is for me. I know that. Yeah, when we send out the emails every week, everybody is on it. So your partner will be on that email. If there's some reason you can't identify who that is, then just reply and we'll send it to you. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you so
Good night,
much.
all.
Stay on
Bye.
a little bit if there are other questions after.
Good night, Sudan.
Good night.
Can I ask one